Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. It's Susan again with this time the Cancer full moon, and I'm going to look at another couple of events that are coming up in January. I just want to thank you for being here. It's been really fun these last few months talking astrology with you and sharing ideas in the comments section and in emails here and there. And I'm really happy that you're here with me. And so let's see what the rest of the year will bring. I hope I can be both informative and even perhaps even a source of comfort for some of you who I know are going through really difficult times and finding it difficult to somehow manage what's going on. Interestingly, I think this Cancer full moon is part of this healing package that we're all having to deal with. Robert Hand always said that the signs were kind of like rectifying whatever the previous sign had done. And so in that regard, we can think of the Cancer full moon here kind of working now to bring our awareness to a lot of the pain and difficulty that we've had with these last few months of Mars going through Gemini. It's not an easy passage. I think I've already mentioned that in a few different videos, and particularly in the Mars and Gemini video, which you can see if you want more details, if you haven't already seen that. And especially since it's been retrograde these last couple of months, it's very intense. Mars retrograde is anyway intense, and then when it's not comfortable, when it's in a sign of challenge, and also triggering placements in certain potentially global charts, thinking in terms of the United States particularly, it's triggering an inherent pattern that is there, and this causes quite a lot of disruption, and we're feeling that. Of course, we're human. We feel not only our own suffering, but we feel that of other people as well, and there's an immense amount of suffering happening in the world. I think this Cancer full moon is an opportunity for us to really recognize that. Not that we have to figure out, in the course of a lunar cycle, what to do with all of that. It's immense. We've also been traumatized these last couple of years, almost 3 years now, with this insane pandemic and this horrendous response to it that has caused large amounts of pain and financial ruin and social upheaval. We've gone through an enormous collective trauma. And then, of course, individual trauma for everything that has happened in the context of all of that in our individual lives. So this is an opportunity. Of course, it's an annual opportunity. This full moon comes up at least once a year, sometimes twice, to have a look at what's going on and why we might need to reflect more deeply on what we need to nourish ourselves. So nourishing, healing, taking care of oneself is very much part of that Cancer paradigm. And we definitely are in this space here with Mars still retrograde. We'll look shortly at how things will shift when Mars goes direct a week after this full moon. But certainly keep that in mind for yourself. Interestingly, in the nakshatras, this lunar nakshatra where the Cancer full moon is actually in Punarvasu. And that literally means to be reborn. And I quite like that because it's an opportunity, not only because it's the beginning of the calendar year, but it's an opportunity in our consciousness and in our emotional relationship to life to be reborn and to offer ourselves an opportunity to heal and recognize what needs healing. And so part of that healing package will be what's over there in Capricorn. So we'll look at that sign by sign later on in the video. But certainly it has to do with communications. The Sun is conjunct Mercury, which is ruling that Mars in Gemini that's been poking at us for months now, and that's quite significant. We're asked to really reflect on these things intellectually through Mercury, as well as emotionally through the Moon, and then communicate something about that. And that can be actually in taking action through speaking with people or speaking about a topic that may be relevant to us, or at the very least to be reflecting on these ideas. The beginning of 2023 is a good time to reflect and plan, look inwards and try and understand what it is that you need to change, what it is that needs to change around you, and not so that you'll be comfortable, but just so that things will be in alignment. We can't expect the world around us to make us comfortable. That's just not how life works. we need to change our attitudes in that regard to make ourselves more comfortable. And focusing on that as well, that intellectual reflection that Mercury retrograde is asking us to do, conjunct the Sun and opposite the Moon, is giving us a context. In Capricorn, it's quite serious. It's planning. It's organizing. It's being conscious of the need to do something practical, and all of that reflected by our emotional nature in Cancer. So a really great opportunity to plan and revise and go over things, but not really a good time to take action. This is where I could announce that I'm also having a workshop. I was originally going to do it on this full moon, but it just became too much. I could see that there was just too many different things happening at once. And so I've postponed it till the new moon. And so just after the new moon, on the 22nd of January, by then Uranus will be turning direct within a couple of hours as well. So all the planets will be direct after that point. I'll be doing a workshop, and I'll link that below this video. And that's really about planning for your year ahead. It's about understanding how you can make very practical, sort of goals for yourself or ambitions for yourself, something that is really worthwhile to pursue in the short run and in the medium term. And then, of course, having a long-term aim as well. But this is also going to be with regards to not only the astrology of 2023, which I'll do in an overview, a relatively in-depth overview for the workshop, but then also individuals can give me the birth data if you want, and we'll look specifically at your chart and see how these different things will affect you. So it's an opportunity to have an inexpensive reading with me if that's what you'd like, and at the very least to join the group to explore what the year ahead will have for all of us. I really like to do these things live. I find it a little bit weird talking to my computer. My dog does too. She's always wondering who I'm talking to. But when I'm in a live seminar, that's obviously the ideal. And of course, the next best thing is to be live across the airwaves with you wherever you are in the world. So do join if you would be interested in something like that. So just coming back to this full moon, again, that, as I mentioned, it's in Punarvasu Nakshatra. So it literally means to exist again. So Vasu means to exist or to be, the sort of life, the fount of being, the ground of being. And then Punar means to do it again, once again. And so this is an opportunity for us, starting now. Of course, these lunar events don't have to happen around the minute that they're occurring, but starting now, as you're listening to this and focusing in the days around the full moon, there's always about 3 days, a day and a half or so on either side of a full moon, where the lunation is actually full. It's considered to be full, even if it's not 100% full, except in the moment of its fullness, which in this case is about 11 o'clock at night on the 6th of January, Universal Time. And so you can reflect on that. What does that mean for you to heal yourself, to nourish others? Perhaps the meaning is also to be nourished by others, and allowing that. Maybe that's something that the Capricorn Mercury is trying to show you, where it's not being allowed. I encountered this over the Christmas holidays, where I realized that I'm not clear enough, making my needs or wants clear to the people around me. And then I feel somehow marginalized, or I feel bad, or I feel left out. And then I realize it's only because I've not really expressed what I needed to express before it starts to bother me. So this was a really great realization. It paired, of course, with Pluto, with Venus conjunct Pluto, which it still is as I'm recording this, so that's New Year's Day. And that Venus conjunct Pluto happens to also be a couple of degrees, or just about a degree off my descendant. So there you are. So it certainly was a big theme for me, and I think it's part of the theme of this big cycle, of the lunar cycle here, of this Cancer full moon. Of course, there's a couple of weeks after the full moon, as it's slowly waning over the following couple of weeks, where we process all of these things that come to our realization, And then in the process of understanding that, something will shift in time for the next lunation, which is the new moon on the 21st of January in Aquarius. And that one's quite exciting as well, because it's continuing a number of different cycles that have begun over the last few years. And so I think there's going to be a lot to say for that one. I'll post that video in a few days, so you can catch up on that a bit before. And then the last thing I just wanted to say about this particular moon, because the lunation is quite pleasant, actually. It's actually quite nice. But again, to reinforce that sense of the healing, we have this T-square. It's not really strong because it's 4 degrees off, but it is sort of a T-square with Chiron. And I'll just indicate where that is if you look at the pointer. Chiron there in Aries is still roughly in a T-square with this lunation, and I think that's something that can be very interesting to reflect on as well. So that's about self-healing, it's about self-awareness. Chiron in Aries is very much about our own sense of, wounded self, through whether that be self-esteem or our sense of self. And then, of course, we've also got Uranus, which is sextiling the moon and trining the sun. It's also trining Mercury. And so that throws a number of new messages of new shifting opportunities, things changing. It's energy that is shape-shifting. And I do find that that's quite inspiring right now, because we definitely need a shift of energy. I think things are heavy and challenging, and the work is not yet done, but we definitely welcome these opportunities to shapeshift as soon as possible. Let's not wait till March when everything is going to change in a big way. So I invite you to think about all those things as regards yourself, and then let's just also have a look at the week following this full moon, when we're going to see the shifting of Mars from retrograde to direct. And as it stations direct, it's interesting to note that it's on Aldebaran. And Aldebaran is a very important star. It's considered one of the regal stars. And this is also, by the way, Mars is at roughly the same point. I mean, it only changes within a few minutes of arc throughout the whole month of January. So we're going to kind of, what I'm saying here about the station direct event on the 12th of January pretty much applies for the month of January. So bear that in mind. It's going to be a month of intensity. That Mars intensity remains with us until it really starts to lighten up after the end of January. And, it's intense. It doesn't necessarily always have to mean negative. Intense is just intense. It's a lot. And think of in terms of a lot of information, a lot of revelations. Of course, we've had a lot of revelations, political, social, whether that be individuals who are being revealed to be not who we thought they were, or of course, there's a million different things. I'm not going to go through the list. If you don't want to watch the news, I totally understand. And if you already watch the news, then you already know what I'm talking about. I want to, again, reiterate that you must be very, very careful about the sources of information that you get, and carry everything with a grain of salt, that you take in information and you reflect on it and allow it to kind of percolate before you decide one way or another. Mars in Gemini is difficult to pin down. It's difficult to make a decision, partly because there are so many elements involved. That's part of the symbolism of Mars in Gemini. So especially right now, don't let yourself get caught up in a lot of the stuff that's coming up. There are no good guys and no bad guys. I think it's worth bearing that in mind. There are just events happening, and the moment that you've decided and labeled somebody is a good person or a bad person, or that there's a particular person who you trust as a source of information, you will start to lose your own discernment, and this you must never lose. You must always keep your sense of what is accurate according to what you know now, and what feels in your body to be right in the greatest sense of what is true. Meaning, is this harmful? Is this beneficial? Is this good for all? Is this going to bring some future benefit? And if not, it's worth holding at a distance. So I want to just keep that caveat in your mind. It's something we'll have to keep recalling again and again and again as Pluto enters into Aquarius. I'll be creating a video this week about that. I've been spending hours researching that and just haven't found the time over the Christmas holidays to do that. So I'll definitely be posting that this week. It's I find a very interesting element, a very interesting time to be alive, in the Chinese sense of interesting. So let's come back to this stationing Mars. Mars is stationing direct not only in Gemini, which, as I mentioned, is complicated. Please go back to that Mars and Gemini video that I've already done. It's on my YouTube channel, and you'll find a lot more information there. I won't reiterate all of that, but when it's stationing, it's very close, just within 2 degrees of Aldebaran, and Aldebaran is a fixed star. It's one of the royal stars that is really important in traditional astrology. So it's in the constellation of Taurus, although it's in the tropical sign of Gemini, and it's now roughly around 10 degrees. So here, the software that I use, it's called AstroGold, and that is like Solar Fire, but for Mac. And that shows us just beyond 10 degrees. So you'll still see on astro.com, for example, they have it at 9:59 degrees. I don't know why there's a discrepancy, except that I guess there's some technical, mathematical discrepancy. I'm not going to argue over 6 or 7 arc minutes. It's roughly 10 degrees of Gemini now. And it's changing every month. It's changing all the time, because the constellations shift gradually backwards compared to the movement of our own solar system. And we refer, of course, to our star, which is the sun. And it's our star and the movement of our star over the equator, north and south of the equator, to the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, which is creating what we know of as this tropical zodiac. And so you mustn't consider it to be in line with the constellations. It was at one time. It no longer is, and that doesn't mean that the system doesn't work. So there's always going to be this discrepancy, and we can still use different references to point to the same thing. So where this would be in sidereal Taurus, we're finding that Aldebaran is in tropical Gemini. So it's known as the red star, and in fact in Jyotish, in Indian astrology, it's known as Rohini, which means the red one. So this is a star that's been known to all ancient cultures for thousands of years, and it marks Rohini Nakshatra. And so Rohini is really the opposite almost energy of Mars. Mars is very much about separation and cutting and action and division and potentially aggression, etc., where Rohini is about pulling things together. It's very much about connection, creativity, it's inspiration. It's really where Mars creates a lot of rifts, it creates a lot of trouble rather than potential connections. And so we're already seeing from this more traditional perspective that Mars here, especially in station, is not going to give us a really helpful result. Now, Aldebaran is also, because it's a royal star, it's also considered beneficial, but it's not the sort of beneficial as in, all wonderful things are going to happen. It's benefit through achievement or through work or through potentially the gains of war as well, and that's certainly traditionally what it has been known for. So it's certainly, as one of the most important stars, the Persian astronomers marked the vernal equinox, so what we call in the northern hemisphere the spring equinox, was marked by Aldebaran. And the other stars, the other of the 4 royal stars which were marking these solstice and equinox points, We're known as the guardians of the sky, or the archangels of the sky. In the case of Aldebaran, it's Archangel Michael. So he was the dragon slayer. Here in Brussels, we have Saint Michel on the top of the town hall, for example, and in one of the oldest cathedral here in Brussels, even older than Notre Dame de Paris. And so it's a very important symbol, astrologically as well as in our zeitgeist. So I think this is a really symbolic time, January. Given so much of the conflict that we're experiencing around the world, I think we're in a real pivotal time. And also Michael, as the Archangel Michael, and as this sort of sense of Aldebaran as the guardian of the sky, he was the military commander, the sort of protector of the East. And the others, so Fomalhaut, which is currently in Pisces, is the guardian, or it's known as Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel was the guardian of the South, for example. Regulus, which is Raphael, was the guardian of the North. And then finally Antares, which is opposite of Aldebaran, was known as Oriel of the West. And so the combination, this dynamic between Antares and Aldebaran is very important. Ptolemy wrote that Aldebaran is like Mars. It's as a star. Not only is it red, it's not just because it looks like Mars, because Mars as a planet sort of shines red as well, but it is also in the energy of Mars, conflict, war, etc. So as such, it's always been associated with war and warlike figures, military figures. It doesn't necessarily, according to the ancient astrology that Ptolemy and others espoused, doesn't necessarily promise success in war, except if there's some real positive aspects, so that can give success in certain conditions. It's not like guaranteed success. It just tends to be an indication of war and conflict. And then Antares, which is there in Sagittarius, exactly opposite, is actually more like Mars and Jupiter together. And so Ptolemy considered that was a more powerful star as a result. So even more powerful than Aldebaran is Antares. So again, because they are polar opposites and they move together as this polar opposite, that is something to bear in mind, because there's always going to be some kind of tension around that degree point. There's always going to be something that shows up. And now we want, if we're looking at any particular chart for an individual or for a country, it's going to reflect differently. But it's interesting to say that, if it's in an individual's chart and there's a really prominent point in the birth chart where Aldebaran is prominent, there tends to be a kind of a nervous energy or a kind of anxiety or an aggressiveness that sort of bubbles up every now and then, or at least kind of lies under the surface. And just two people who have that very strongly are Sean Penn, who has in fact Mars here, and also Prince William, whose Mercury is there, and Prince William of the United Kingdom. And so watch out for these people. I know they're not the only ones. There's also Viktor Orban, who has his son there, for example. There are many. Viktor Orban is the leader of Hungary. So there's many people that have significant placements that are around this point, and they might show up in the news in January. There's something that might come up in their public lives, because it's quite an important star. It tends not to be sort of internalized, but it's something that can be externalized. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And of course, we wish everyone well. It's not that we're hoping that something awful will happen, and it's not that something awful will happen to these people. It's just that, that can bring energy to the fore that is already latent in the chart, and particularly as Mars is coming around right there to poke at it. And so I think we might find some things are a little bit more aggravated than usual. Yeah. So again, is this notion of Aldebaran as reflecting conflict, especially in Gemini, in opposition to Antares, which is in Sagittarius. This is also the axis of beliefs and knowledge and so on. And so it's actually been in tropical Gemini. It moved. The precession caused it to appear in tropical Gemini, moving out of Taurus in about 1262. So in the 13th century, since then, Aldebaran has been in Gemini. And around that time was the time of the Christian Crusades against Islam. I'm not suggesting we're having crusades now, although there are a few. If you look around, if you read the news every now and then, you'll see that there are some crusades. Not all of them religious, many of them are, but coming from political beliefs in many ways. So there's a lot of, again, highly propagandized crusading around good and bad. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? And I think that this can be a flashpoint in the month of January, particularly around the time of Mars's direct station. What I'm hoping, but this is unpredictable, it's very difficult to know what this could look like, is that this could be a resolution or something shifts in such a way that it allows things to move forward. But as we'll see shortly, I think it could also mean that there's an acceleration. Particularly, I'm referring to the war with in Ukraine, this proxy war that even the United States has finally admitted that they're waging against Russia. And so we're now going to see, I think, in the second half of January, a real shift in that energy of the war. And that could be partly because the ground is now sufficiently frozen that action is more readily available, and more possibility of ground forces moving in. Ukraine, unfortunately, is being utterly devastated. Although if you read the mainstream media, you wouldn't know it. You'd think that they were doing really amazing things. But it's something like, reliable neutral military information says that the Russians are losing about one man for every 8 Ukrainians. And it's just utterly devastating. So I'm really hoping that this will stop, that this will be a turning point, and that is possible. Although I suspect that we will see things getting quite built up before they actually resolve. It's worth noting that there has been talk of a peace talk for the month of February, so coming up in February, and that would be an interesting thing because the Mercury retrograde shadow is going to pass after the 7th of February. So that could be a very interesting development. I do hope something moves there. Of course, we all do. I also want to mention that Aldebaran is an indicator of people who are restless. I already mentioned a couple of relatively famous people who we know to be kind of anxious and nervous and restless and agitated. But it also means people in terms of the populace. And so that agitation can also lead to rioting and stirring up popular dissent and revolution. Of course, we're going to continue this whole notion of change and revolution in a very big way as we find more and more of that energy, that Aquarian energy, being disrupted by Pluto as of the later part of March. Again, I'll come back and discuss that a little bit more. But I think this can also lead to a lot of quarreling, a lot of disruption. Again, all I can say is take everything with a grain of salt, assume the best, and don't always assume the worst in people. We have a tendency in the social media age to very quickly judge, and this can have such a deleterious effect on people because in a flash, what a person is can be completely torn down. Reputations or, all kinds of things can happen in ways that are dishonest and inappropriate and not even right. So we have to remember that there is a certain element of humanity that we have to ourselves protect. You know, we've become sort of stripped of our humanity in the last 3-4 years in an accelerated way. Of course, this is happening over decades, but especially the last 3 or 4 years. And I think it's important to protect that. And this Cancer full moon that we're having is one way that we can draw that back in. How can we remember our humanity and remember that everyone also has that seed of humanity, and whatever that might represent in whatever situation, we try and draw on that first and don't rush to judgment, trying not to argue, trying not to jump into conflict. Any kind of conflict that can be avoided should be, and that there's a potential for resolution, deeper understanding and resolution that can come when the energy is calmer. And I would want to see Mars far away from Aldebaran and ideally leaving Gemini altogether. There's plenty of time to resolve certain things without having to jump at people's throats while this is all very intense. So although I am speaking a lot of the negative qualities, let's say, of Aldebaran, I also want to point out that this is something that is also considered to be one of the most fortunate stars. So the thing is, though, the honors and riches that it allows, it's not sort of like Jupiterian honors and riches or Venusian ones where it's coming through grace and ease. It tends to be that there's a struggle involved. And so, yes, on the one hand, it's very fortunate, but it's fortunate in that Martian way. So through personal action, it'll be your whatever fortune you can manage to eke out from this transit or this passage of Mars across Aldebaran, would be a result of your actions, of what you're doing. And hopefully not war, hopefully not aggression, but it has to require you. It requires your effort. It requires you to do something. It's not going to land in your lap through the grace of whatever. It's not that kind of fortune. And so the honor that's there can be honor, sort of valor of war. You know, that's honorable in the context, but not necessarily where we all want to be. So it has been worshipped for thousands of years by the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Chinese, Druids as well, and even Amazonian Indian tribes. It's a significant star. Whenever you have the opportunity to go stargazing, it can be really interesting to kind of understand or learn where these placements are, so you can kind of spot them. I have a couple of apps in my phone that allow me to see the night sky. So there's some that you can download. They're free, and they show you what's going on in the night sky. And that's really nice to track. It's really interesting to follow. And because I live in a city, I can't usually see the night sky so clearly. Even if it's clear skies, the night sky is very full of satellites and all kinds of things that clog it up. And this way you can get an image of the passage of Mars over Aldebaran, and you'll be able to see them close together around the middle of January. So just keep in mind, it's kind of like when you're looking at that star and you're looking at this energy of Mars, shifting. This is almost like looking back in time. You're doing the same thing that thousands of generations have done before, looking up at the sky and trying to understand what's happening based on what they see in the sky as a pattern. So, right, let's not get too much deeper into this. I think I just wanted to share this with you and just get you thinking a little bit. Also, just getting you thinking a little bit about what's happening in the world around us, because this is, I think, something that's going to be very powerfully indicated throughout the month of January. I want to show up a little bit of the Russian Federation chart. Once the USSR finally collapsed, there was an establishment of all of the different component countries, and this, in particular, Russia, was established on Christmas Day in 1991. I remember that really well, and it was quite significant because it was so sudden. This is another thing that we don't maybe realize if you weren't really aware at that time. These events were incredibly sudden, and so it's something that you can see the suddenness here. For example, when we see in the fifth house, we've got the North Node conjunct Neptune and Uranus. This North Node Uranus Neptune was a major shift in the global politics that year. Not just Russia, so many other things, including China, were shifting very, very quickly. And I just want to show you that this stationing direct event is triggering aspects of this chart. Sorry, I'm pulling up all kinds of weird things here. And so if you look here, you've got Mercury that is going to be retrograding and passing over that North Node point of the founding of the Russian Federation. And also Aldebaran in their chart is in the 10th house. And it's going to be conjunct both Aldebaran. But you see how much it's grown, how far it's gone in 31 years. So it's gone, less than 1 degree in 31 years. And so we've got Mars very, very close to that. It's going to be stationing at that point. So very significant for the Russian Federation. The other, aspect of this is that, of course, where we look for Aldebaran, we look for Antares, and Antares is conjunct Mercury in the Russian chart. So again, something very interesting to notice. There's definitely going to be consequences. Mercury representing commerce, but what's interesting in the news is that Russia has been able to withstand all of the various now layers upon layers of sanctions that have been launched against it. And that's not just in the last year, but in the last many years, because the US has been throwing sanctions at it for a very long time, and the European countries as well. And but it's turning eastward, and it's now, instead of causing the collapse and the change of leadership of Russia that the United States was hoping for, it's turning Russia into a partnership with countries that previously it had always associated with, but much less strongly. So now it's kind of like forcing people together in a way, or forcing countries together in a way that was unanticipated, certainly, as an outcome of this proxy war. And so we're finding now that Russia could actually quite substantially benefit from what's going on because of its ties now to the BRICS country, through other BRICS countries, and that association is growing as well. Many more than just the original 5 countries are asking to join. And especially the Russian-Chinese association looks very, very powerful. So I think we're seeing here something quite stimulating. I'm not going to even venture to decide what that might be for Russia, but I see that commerce is affected both natally as well as through transit, some very new thing coming up in terms of commerce, commercial agreements. And times are changing very, very powerfully. So I think this middle of January is going to be a very significant one for the Russian Federation. And 10th house is the house of, the rulership, the leadership. There can be something significant potentially that happens also to the Russian leadership. Medvedev is one of the names that comes up as potential replacement for Putin. As he's been going around the world, Putin doesn't travel anymore, and he's been going around the world in his place, and he's recently met with Xi Jinping, for example. So I think this could be something to watch, something very interesting in terms of the Russian leadership. So carrying on from here, we look at the United States. And of course, you recall that the US has Mars in Gemini natally, And of course, it has Aldebaran in its house of relationship natally, and it has Antares natally in the house of self, or the house of the U.S. itself. And we want to have a maximum of 2.5 degree orb. So it's not, it can't be really considered an important conjunction beyond that. It's not like planets, because the fixed stars don't move so much. They must be considered to be different than planets, and so we give them a much more tight orb. Some of the fixed stars only have a 1 degree orb, and others have, in this case, for example, Aldebaran has a 2.5 degree orb. Either way, what we do see is that in the natal chart of the US, Aldebaran is conjunct Uranus. So this might explain some of the sort of constant warring, constant upheaval, constant shape-shifting around relations, around military in the US experience. And of course now Mars is going to be exactly conjunct that Uranus. So it's going to be very difficult to predict how this will affect the United States. Aldebaran is now within, currently, today's Aldebaran is within orb of conjunction to the descendant, of course, which is relationships. And of course, Antares on the other side, the more powerful one, is on the ascendant. This is something to keep in mind. The U.S. is, it's hard to discuss this. It's very, very frustrating to me. They have been developing bases all around China for many, many years, and that has been a flashpoint for many, many years. And it is same going on in Iran and all kinds of countries that we're designed to hate. We're told to hate these countries because it serves their military aims, and so we want to always keep in mind that there's more things going on that we're not aware of. So bear that in mind. Again, the good guys and bad guys are a bit confused, and it's not necessarily what we see on the news, and especially not what we see in Hollywood films, because that is also part of the propaganda arm of the US military. So all of this to say that I think January is going to be a very powerful month of real challenge and real conflict, or if all goes well, things can change on a dime, potentially conflict resolution, and that would be one of the more powerful outcomes of this. At this point, with Mars and Antares, they're so prominently in the 7th house of the American chart. It's also coinciding with one of the last passages of Pluto to the US Pluto. I think there's only one more passage that it's going to get before it's finally done. But these are intense times for the United States. Things are changing, and we can see that around the world, where so many countries are just saying, okay, enough now, enough. And we're not doing your bidding, and we're not going to let you do what you've been doing to us for decades and decades. So things are changing in a very important geopolitical way. And of course, the rest of us are caught in the middle, right? So we're all here just wishing that things would calm the heck down. But I'm not sure that January is the month for calming the heck down. So what we want to do is draw on that Cancer full moon. Calm ourselves down in the most nourishing way, taking care of our needs, taking care of our emotions, and being a source of comfort to ourselves as well as to others around us. So let's have a look now at the different signs and how the full moon and this Mars stationing will affect everybody. Aries, this full moon is happening in your 4th house. It's quite a lovely time, actually, to have a moon in the 4th house around the holidays and just afterwards. So there probably is quite a lot of reflection on connections that you were able to make or make again, since Mercury is retrograde, around the family, or around perhaps, what concerns you around the home. Either way, something about house and home is uppermost in your mind, and you're becoming aware of that. It could be that there's a desire either to move or to change the circumstances of your living space, or that could be an awareness of your psychological state as well. And certainly with the Sun and Mercury retrograde conjunct in your 10th house, it's definitely, I should think, going to reflect on your work as well, or your status, your social status. And I think you're also, I mean, this is not new, of course, because Mars has already been in your third house since August 20th, but you're also probably feeling that you've got a lot to say. And Mars in the third house is quite vocal, outgoing, sometimes saying things in a way that can be confrontational, abrupt, totally unlike an Aries. But anyway, that's your ruler, remember. So when your ruler is somewhere in the chart, you always want to take notice. And of course, here your ruler is not in a happy place, and also retrograde currently at the time of this full moon. Do listen to the beginning of this, the introduction to this full moon, because there is quite a lot of information about the Mars stationing direct, and that's going to happen in your third house. And so about a week after the full moon, things will shift in your third house of communication and neighbors and your goals and your willpower. If you feel like your get up and go kind of got up and went, then I think you'll find that after the middle of January, things will shift in that more dynamic direction that you're used to. So that will help you. And of course, you've got still Jupiter going through your first house, and that will certainly perk things up a lot as well. So if you've been feeling that you've been in a period of stagnancy for the last couple of months, certainly November or December, I think you'll find that January will shift that. And just be careful not to overdo it or rush into things, and reflect deeply on communications and how you speak to other people, issues around siblings, for example, issues around anything to do with business if you are in business for yourself, because there's a lot of energy around that. Mercury is retrograde in your 10th house of career, ruling this Mars that's not too happy in your third house. So, and that's your ruler, of course. So there's a lot that seems to be connected to how you communicate, with whom, and particularly with regards to what you do in the world. So beware of rushing in. Certainly don't also worry if you can't really get things together before the middle of January. I would certainly wait until the last week of January to really do anything. So after the new moon, which will be on the 21st, the 22nd is when Uranus turns direct, and then all of the planets will be moving direct, not just Mars, but Mercury and Uranus, which are the last holdouts, will also be moving direct. And this will give you a lot more oomph if that's what's needed. So strategize for now, Aries, and plan out what you'd like to see happen in the next few weeks and perhaps over the year. And I wish you all the best in 2023. Taurus, this is happening in your third house of communication. So something is being highlighted in your third house, which could represent the way that you communicate with people, or it could be with regards to work as well. Your ruler, Venus, is in your 10th house of career. You've had Saturn there for the last couple of years, so there's certainly a lot of activity around career for you. And when the moon is in the third house, we tend to become aware of something that we weren't really aware of in terms of a full moon, of course, not just a random passing of the moon, but here the moon is highlighting something that may have begun around 6 months ago, and that was in the part of your chart which had a lot to do with your desires of what it is that you want from life, and sort of what your direction is, what your life purpose is, and maybe you're getting a clearer sense of that. Mars is in your second house, still retrograde at the time of the full moon, and it will turn direct. Make sure you listen to the introduction to the video. There's a lot of detail around Mars stationing direct in there. But a week after the moon, Mars will be direct in your house of values and money. And I think if there is some realization around the direction that you're taking, or the kind of energy that you're putting out in your local community, or in terms of how you communicate with people, then, or even in terms of your willpower, I think especially with Mars in the second, that can help with this understanding of what's been going on in terms of willpower, or potentially feeling lack thereof. Um, so definitely, I think after the middle of the month, you're going to have a clearer sense of what to do about that. I would wait until the fourth week of January before really taking action. Wait until after the new moon in Aquarius. And that will help you, especially with regards to career or any kind of social status issues, which is what currently what Venus is highlighting right now, and Saturn, of course, has been highlighting since December 2020. You've still got a couple of months of that. Saturn in your 10th house of career, 10th house of status and how people see you in the world, your role in the world. Um, so use this time, I should think, to reflect on all of those things and how you would like to go forward. Saturn is going to be leaving that part of your chart and not coming back there for about 29 years. So this is your opportunity to really imprint something of lasting value in terms of your authority in the world. So this moon can contribute to that in your understanding of all of that. Good luck with all of this, Taurus, and a very happy new year to you. Gemini, this full moon is in your second house. That's, of course, money. It's the money you earn, it's the stuff that you have, it's all the valuable stuff that you might own, what you consider to be valuable. It doesn't mean that your stuff has to be super valuable, it just means that it's important to you. It's also the way that you feel about your values, and especially with a full moon there, I think that's something that can be highlighted right now. You've got Mercury retrograde in the house of other people's money, conjunct the sun, opposing the moon, which is giving us this full moon. So certainly there's something to do with other people's money. That could involve inheritance, or that could involve anything from money that comes from clients or tax payouts or insurance money, loans and things like that. And there's maybe a realization or an awareness. And that could be in any direction because it's Venus, it's not Venus, it's Mercury that is retrograding into the sun. And so that could be that you're reflecting on the need to take out a loan or reflecting on how to manage your money. Mercury also involves money. It's the commercial aspect of money. And so asking for a loan, for example, would be part of that. And so I think this could have something to do with money issues that might be either new and just now coming into your awareness, or a new evaluation of all of that, and it's now time to deal with that. This can also be an interesting time for you anyway, because Mars 1 week after this full moon is going to be stationing direct. Please listen to the introduction to this video if you haven't already, because it really will concern you, especially. Mars in Gemini in your first house has been there since last August. It stays until the 25th of March. It's really affecting you very personally, Gemini, and this is something I think you'll want to pay attention to, especially if you have important placements or signs, planets in that first house around the 8th or 9th degree. Could be 7th, 8th, 9th degree. And that, of course, would be by opposition in Sagittarius or by square in Pisces or in Virgo. So definitely think about what that means for you with Mars stationing direct. There's been a long period of reflection on how you're communicating, how you're standing up for yourself, how you are putting yourself out in the world. And as it's been retrograde, that may have been frustrating. It may have been something of a challenge. You may have found yourself more confrontational than usual. I think this can be a time where you start to realize some of the lessons of the past couple of months while Mars was retrograde in your first house. And this realization is going to help you when Mars turns direct after the 12th, where you have basically 2 months, a little bit more than 2 months, to use the energy that you've understood that Mars can give you in a constructive way and get on with your plans. I wouldn't do very much before the 4th week of January because Mercury will still be retrograde until the 18th of January. So if there's no urgency about whatever it is that needs to be done, just wait, strategize and plan until the 3rd week of January, and then move out into the world, do the things that you need to do, get your projects moving in the 4th week. And I think by the new moon, which is coming up in Aquarius on the 21st of January, then you'll be feeling that all engines are firing and ready to go. Have a wonderful new year ahead, Gemini, and I'll see you very soon. Cancer, this moon, of course, is in your first house. This is your full moon this year. And this is going to affect you very personally. It always does. Of course, Cancer is ruled by the moon, and so whatever is happening with the moon is going to be affecting your inner sense of self. This is why one of the reasons that we describe Cancer as very moody or changeable, sort of impenetrable on a psychological or emotional level, is because the moon rules Cancer. And because there's this constant change of phase of the moon and this constant movement around the zodiac. And so here you are with your full moon kind of showing you something about yourself in relationship to others. This is a significant energy. It's always around this time of year. This Cancer Capricorn axis is very important around December and January. So that's not new. But in this particular case, you've also got a retrograde Mercury that is backing into the sun, which is opposing this moon, giving us that full moon. And that Mercury in Capricorn is about getting things sorted, getting things right in terms of partnerships, important relationships. These are peer relationships, or they're relationships of clients or people who advise you, for example. Whatever it is that you're understanding about yourself at this time, that has already been a result of the initial phase of the new moon phase of Capricorn's new moon 2 weeks before. Something is showing up now in this area of your life, how you do relationships, how you might be needing to be different in that regard. Are you taking care of yourself? Are you standing up for what you need to stand up for in terms of relationships? I think this is something that will reflect on Mars having been in your 12th house. Not an easy place for Mars anyway, and especially not in Gemini. Mars has been retrograde there for the last 2 months. It's been there since the 20th of August. It's been antagonizing. It's been something that kind of feels like an irritability or frustration that you can't satisfy. Nothing seems to fit. Nothing seems to feel right. I say this with great confidence because I have a Cancer moon and rising, and my levels of impatience have just been, basically in the basement. So I'm one with you here, Cancer. I fully understand what this might be feeling like for you. Of course, it depends on each natal chart. It's not, of course, going to be the same for everybody, but a week after this full moon, we've got Mars stationing direct in that 12th house, which also can involve foreigners, foreign lands, agreements, business agreements and contracts with people from other places. And so there can have been a lot of frustration around this, or it can also be with regards to your deeper sense of your sort of unconscious self, or a feeling of not being supported. This is the house of hidden enemies. The house where things are happening in a way that is not clear for you. That can also be where your own behavior or habits can be sabotaging yourself as well. So all of this coming to the fore in January, definitely a worthy time to step back and reappraise. It's simultaneous to Jupiter moving into your 10th house of career and social engagements, and so it will feel like a kind of a push and pull, because on one hand you feel like you need to be pushing yourself out the door, on the other hand you'd rather just stay under the duvet. Again, I'm 100% with you on this because I'm feeling it too. I do think things will shift enormously by the 3rd week of January. That new moon that we're getting in Aquarius is going to be at a time when at least Mercury and Mars are moving direct within a day of the new moon. Then we've got Uranus moving direct. All the planets will be moving direct after that. And so this feeling of wanting to hibernate and not getting anything done, or feeling like nothing is able to be done, I do think we're going to find relief in that as the end of the month comes along. And then it's all systems go with Jupiter in the 10th house, taking advantage of that until the middle of May. So have a great year ahead, Cancer, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Leo, this full moon is happening in your 12th house, which is about endings, and so it's kind of a realization of something. It's often when we have a full moon, a culmination point. It's a culmination of 2 weeks ago when we had the Capricorn new moon in your house of everyday health and everyday life and work and schlepping around. And when we have the moon there 2 weeks afterwards, we're aware of something. Maybe there's something new in our awareness. There's an ending or a culmination of something, a kind of a logical conclusion to something. And that is also in the house of endings. And so it's a really interesting time to perhaps decide consciously what it is that you'd like to wrap up and let go of, what certain potential health habits or unsupportive habits are needing to be wrapped up and let go of. And with the moon there, it's all really showing up. You've got Mars in your house of groups and associations, friendships, your aims and your long-term sort of wishes and dreams. It's been kind of stagnant there the last couple of months that Mars has been retrograde. It's not really going in your favor, so there may be a feeling that you're not really sure how to engage anymore, what's going on, and maybe that moon is highlighting that feeling of confusion, maybe a sense of unconscious block. Give it some time. In this lunar cycle, I think you will find it unblocked, and so by the new moon that's coming on the 21st in the sign of Aquarius in your house of relationships, I think you'll find a fresh new dynamism there. Keeping in mind that your sun is in the solar sixth house, your ruler of the ascendant, or the ruler of any Leo planets that you have is the sun. It's in Capricorn, very serious, getting down to business. This is a really good time for you to put together a desire list or a list of things that you'd like to accomplish, goals that you'd like to set for yourself. You of all signs are really supported in that endeavor. With Mercury retrograde, you can be thinking about things, really giving it a lot of thought in terms of how old patterns have been taking shape. This can have something to do with old colleagues or old issues coming up that needs certain review before Mercury goes direct again on the 18th. So all of this kind of pulling together in this sense of what next, and I think the what next is going to be more clear for you by the end of January. That feeling of kind of being held back or potentially having clashes with colleagues or people in groups that you spend time with, it's going to move on. And that may not be necessarily comfortable, but it will certainly move on after the middle of January. Have a fantastic 2023, Leo, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Virgo, Sun, Moon, and Rising. This is happening in your 11th house of groups and associations and your wishes and dreams for the future. When you've got the Sun in the 5th, it's also really pleasant because it tends to be an opportunity to feel like you want to let your hair down and do something nice and enjoy being fun. Of course, don't forget that Capricorn is there and it's ruled by Saturn, so Saturn is a bit of a wet blanket in terms of having fun. That's one of the reasons you get your reputation, Virgo, for not really being able to enjoy the present moment. Nonetheless, it's worth trying. Your ruler is retrograde, and this is going to show you something in that 5th house, connected to the sun, connected to this full moon by opposition. And so your ruler is giving you an opportunity to reflect on a number of things. What makes me happy? What is it that I want out of my love life? What is it that I need to do creatively or that I'd like to do in terms of children, for example? In terms of studies as well. The 5th house is the house of students as well. The 11th house is the house of groups. And so connecting those different places. The 11th house is also the house of gains from the things that you do. So that can also be showing up in terms of what it is that you might be earning, how it is that might need to change, how you'd like to reorganize all of that. With Mars going through your 10th house, there's been an endless questioning of what am I doing? How am I doing that? How am I showing up in the world? It probably has felt like nothing makes sense or nothing is working out in the last 2 months while Mars has been retrograde. So don't beat yourself up. That's your ruler, which is also ruling that Mars in the 10th because Mercury rules both Virgo as well as Gemini. And so that Mars has been holding you back as well. Now, a week from the full moon, Mars is going to move direct in your 10th house, and it is going to start to feel like things are advancing, things are moving forward. that can be in terms of career opportunities or just your role in the world, how you are moving out into the world. So given that you've had Neptune in your seventh house for such a long time now, it's been 11 years already, and it'll be another 4 or 5 to go. With Neptune there, you have maybe some confusion around relationships as well. So don't beat yourself up if you're feeling that confusion by opposition Neptune, if it's opposing your Virgo sun or Virgo moon, or if it's opposing your ascendant. That will lead to some confusion. So that Mars in the 10th house by the ascendant, or the 10th solar house, for example, is going to give you some energy, but only after it moves direct again. Take this time as a time to assess, try and figure out what to do, and then you'll find that by the end of January, certainly by the new moon after the 21st, things start to take on a whole new shape. So I wish you all the best, Virgo, for 2023, and I'll see you in the next video. Libra, the full moon is happening in your house of career. That's opposite your house of home and family, and what you need to be happy. And so there might be some realizations around how you step out into the world, how you show up in terms of your social role, or your ambitions and what it is that you do. And maybe there's a need to reflect on that. We've got Mercury retrograde, conjunct the sun, and there's maybe a desire now to really reflect on what all that means for you, for your family, for your happiness. This is a great opportunity to take these next couple of weeks to really examine those things. There's some things that you might be realizing about work that needs to be altered by you, or that will be changing around you, and therefore you need to respond to one way or the other. It's definitely a good idea to change all of that in terms of how you want to go forward for the rest of the year. It's a good strategizing moment until the end of January. Your ruler, Venus, is in the 5th house of everyday fun and love affairs and all the good stuff, children and enjoyment of life, your hobbies. It's a very creative Venus when it's in the 5th house, and so that can have you also coming up with some really creative ideas. That's also in a harmonious aspect to you because it's an air sign, and since you've got Mars in another air sign causing potential for tension as it's retrograde, or even a sense of desire, frustrated desire, this Venus is kind of cooling things down quite a bit, and that's really going to be helpful. You'll find that Venus starts to trine that Mars as you go towards the day that Mars starts to station, and so you're going to have a lot more dynamism and a sense of purpose, a higher understanding of what it is that you want to do, how you want to move forward. What is your reason for being, a sense of, the purpose of life, higher goals in terms of your philosophy of life, or even aspects that could have something to do with going back to school and in a higher sense of school and learning, not just sort of basic education, but higher education, if that's the case. And so all of this dynamism is there, but it's latent in the middle of the month until Mars moves direct, until we've got that dynamism of Mars releasing a lot of that pent-up pressure and allowing you to move forward. Having understood all these things from the last couple of months, now we've got Mars moving forward as of the 12th. Do listen to the introduction if you're not sure what that all means for you, because I spent quite a lot of time discussing that Mars stationing direct and how that can influence us. And I think in your case it could be quite inspiring because it is in a really nice place. It's in the 9th house, which is an inspiring place, higher minded, and so just reflect now what it is that needs to change in that 10th house of career and social contribution, and find your higher sense of purpose. Once Mars is going direct, you'll be able to jump into the role. Certainly after that the new moon that's coming up in Aquarius, I think this will all make much more sense towards the last week of January. And in the meantime, just muddle your way through and put everything down on paper so you know what it is that you want to do going forward. Have a fantastic year ahead, Libra. I wish you all the best in 2023. Scorpio, this is happening in your 9th house. The ninth house is a nice place to have a full moon because there's some kind of awareness of your sense of higher purpose. It's an inspiring place, the ninth house, and so it can bring you a lot of information, a lot of understanding of things that may not have been terribly clear. That is also more so because you've got Mercury in the third house, where it absolutely loves to be. It's very comfortable in the third house. In Capricorns, it's very organized Mercury as well, very serious, very much able to plan and go forward with your goals and desires, the sense of your willpower being very, very strong with this Sun-Mercury conjunction opposite the Moon. So I think this could be a really interesting time. This can, of course, reflect international connections as well. The ninth house is foreign places and foreigners traveling at a distance, and that moon can highlight aspects of that for you. It's going to show you something of maybe a culmination of that, culmination of a phase of that. Something began about 6 months ago in your third house of travel, communications, potentially neighbors and cousins as well, siblings, and that is being highlighted here by reflection through this full moon. And then 6 months from now at the Cancer new moon, you'll probably have a clearer idea of that new beginning that you'd like in that ninth house. What is the next thing? It's a longer term thing, and that's going to probably show up and start taking shape in the summertime when we have that Cancer new moon. And then, of course, your ruler is in the 8th house, where it's been since last August, and stirring up quite a lot of internal understanding around fears, overcoming fears, about confronting aspects of potentially marriage or other relationship issues, relationship in terms of shared income, shared resources. Mars is going to be 1 week after this full moon stationing direct. And do listen to the introduction, because you'll get a lot of information about what that means and how that will feel around that time. But once your ruler starts to move direct, I think you're going to find that things take on a much more positive, forward-moving energy, where you may have felt frustrated for the last couple of months. And, Mars has been retrograde since the end of October. That's not easy. So for the last 2 months, basically, you've been feeling kind of held back. It's not an easy energy when that's your ruler in particular. You like to move forward and be more dynamic. You like to have things kind of go your way, especially. And when Mars is in the 8th, that can feel like an accumulated frustration. So strategize. You're good at that, Scorpio. Strategy is your forte. And so take this couple of weeks to really decide how you want to go forward in regards to anything to do with your future, or how you connect with other people around shared resources. Things that happen behind the scenes, particularly the 8th house, can also be loss or death. It can have something to do with issues that need renegotiation, for example, around a contract, because it's in the sign of Gemini. This would be the time to really reflect on all of that. And then when the time comes after, especially the new moon coming in Aquarius after the 21st, you'll find the energy really shifts. At that point, you're going to have both Mercury and Mars direct, and then within a day of that new moon, then you'll have Uranus direct as well in your 7th house of relationships. So I think this is a good time to back up, reflect on a lot of things, be honest about things that have been bothering you, be honest about things that may have upset you in the past that you may need to be dealing with now, and you'll find that it's easier to go forward with a kind of a clean slate. Then afterwards, you're going to be first covering some old territory, and then by February going into a whole new zone until the end of March. So I wish you all the best this year coming for 2023, Scorpio, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Sagittarius, this moon is happening in your 8th house. This is a very transformational place. It's where we have realizations around how our unconscious or psychological nature may have been holding us back, or may have been a source of turmoil in our lives. It's often where sudden events happen, sudden transformations. And so with the full moon there can be realizations around that. You're starting to recognize the consequences, the effects of certain things on you. This is going to be with regards to emotions, of course, because it's the Cancer and the moon, of course. So your psychological nature, your emotional relationship to all of those things. Good time to become aware of any misdeeds or misgivings around how you're doing things or how other people are doing things, especially with regards to sharing resources, any money that you get from other people. This can also be with regards to health issues for you, Sagittarius. So if that's the case, then making sure that you're aware and taking care of your health. The eighth house can especially be with regards to your sexual health, reproductive health, and even also mental health, because it has to do with our psyche. If you're into more sort of occult stuff, and I suppose you are if you're listening to this, then this moon can also have you realizing certain things that you can sort of highlight as you go forward. You can start to become aware of a deeper inkling or a deeper urge to know more in that area of life. And so on that lighter side, it can be something quite interesting, something that you want to grow in understanding. You've got your, in your second house, you've got the Sun and Mercury conjunct. Mercury is retrograde, and that is very much tied to this money story of the eighth house. It's about your values. It's about earnings in your own right. It's about the stuff that you have, your wealth, and the money that you have from the job that you have, or your own property, for example. And this is in opposition to that moon, so this is certainly factoring into what you're realizing, what you're understanding, or what's culminating there in that eighth house of Cancer. It's a good opportunity also to understand things if you are a business person, an entrepreneur. You've got Jupiter moving into that fifth house, and with all of this energy around money, that could be something to do with that energy of business, launching a business, or having to revise things around clients, for example. You've had Mars in your seventh house, which is the house of clients. It's all partnerships of all kinds. That may not have been easy, because it is something that causes a bit of conflict, a bit of tension in relationships. So you might have had people kind of cranky around you all that time, or sort of pressurizing you in a way that you may not have been happy about. Whatever frustrations have been building up in that relationship area are going to be resolved or understood, or at least there's going to be a feeling of being able to move on from it only after the 12th, so about a week after this full moon. And when Mars starts to move on, you're going to have a fresher energy in this regard, maybe with regards to who is in your life or how they show up, having resolved certain things, or having perhaps some things coming to a head. And so that can be initially challenging, but it can, I think, after February particularly, be a source of real dynamism. Of course, Mars in the 7th can also energize relationships. It can just be very stimulating. It doesn't have to be necessarily negative, although it can tend to be that way. But with Jupiter going through your 5th house and being ruled by this Mars, it could be some exciting new love. It could be some new relationship that shows up. A very interesting lover appears on the scene, or a new creative dynamic that comes between you and another person. So that's not all bad, is it, Sagittarius? So I wish you all the best in 2023. Have a great year ahead, and I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, this full moon is happening in your 7th house of relationships. All those important partnerships and contracts and things, all the things that you need to transact with another person, and the people themselves are there in the 7th house. So you're realizing something about this. You've also got Mercury retrograde in your 1st house, so there may be some element of needing to revise aspects of what you understand around those things, around aspects of how you are engaging, either with regards to communication with people, or with how you show up in terms of your agreements with people. Mercury is contractual agreements as well as communication. It's also siblings, and so there can be some new energy coming in around siblings. Your ruler is in the 2nd house of money, as is Venus, and it's been there. Saturn has been there since December, probably just around your birthday of 2020. And so, unless you're January born, then it would be 2021. So you've had it 2 years now in that house of money, your personal resources and your income, your stuff, your values, and so on. And so that has been perhaps an area of extreme focus for you, getting organized, sorting that out, potentially considering investments and so on. At the same time, Mars has been in your sixth house of everyday work, everyday life. It could be with regards to colleagues, for example. That can also be an aspect of your health. Mars has been there since August, 20th of August. It's been retrograde the last 2 months or so. And as a result, it's possibly had you needing to deal with things in a different way, or not being able to deal with things, or having a feeling like nothing's working, like you're trying, you're really working towards a goal, but it seems like you're working at cross purposes, either with people, colleagues, employees, or with the actual everyday slog. If it's with regards to your health, there may have been a health issue that has shown up, especially during this retrograde. Take care of it, take it seriously. Mars in the sixth can indicate some, especially in Gemini, some inflammation around respiratory tract, the lungs, the arms. It's definitely worth paying attention if there's any signs of burnout, any issues around nervous disorders. Mars will be aggravating all of that. Mars will continue to be there until the 25th of March, but after the 12th, it's finally moving direct. And so that whatever's frustrating you, whatever's been building up all this time, is very likely going to feel like it's being opened up, either through a potential coming to the head of a conflict, for example, or it could be that you just kind of, like the dam breaks and everything starts to move in the right direction. So I think you're going to find that after the third week of January, certainly after the new moon of the 21st, and when Uranus finally goes direct in your fifth house on the 22nd, all planets are moving direct, and it's kind of like all systems go. You're going to feel a lot more proactive. You're going to be back to your old self, Capricorn, feeling that things are back in line with the level of productivity you're used to. So good luck with all of that in 2023, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Aquarius, this is happening in your sixth house of everyday health and habits, and so sometimes it's also where things go wrong. It's where we have a lot of aggravation. It can be nitpicky things, whether it be with regards to health or whether it be with regards to issues that we have to deal with, the kind of drudgery of every day. And this is by opposition in the 12th house, of course. So the Sun and Mercury and Pluto are in your 12th house. Now the Sun and Mercury are conjoined, and Mercury is retrograde. So that is probably feeling like nothing much is really happening. You might feel extremely tired. You might feel also that whatever you desire at this particular time seems to either be not very clear or not really working in your favor, but there's a realization around this full moon that something needs to change in your everyday experience. And again, whether that be health or everyday activities, it's something that only you will know. But there's a realization around this full moon time that you can really take advantage of. There is a very strong emphasis on you, of course, the last couple of years while your ruler Saturn has been in the first house. You now, just temporarily, you've got Venus in there giving you a bit of a boost, which is quite nice. But soon you're going to also have Pluto moving into that house. So this is kind of like the last couple of months where you're preparing yourself for a very big transformation. Saturn puts things in order. Pluto tears everything down. And so don't be afraid of that, Aquarius. Have a sense of being open to change, having all the familiar aspects of your life transformed in a way. Doesn't have to be bad. It's simply that it's reconfiguring things that you thought you might have known. Do take care not to stay stuck on one way of looking at life. Allow yourself to go with the flow. Take a lot of leeway and see that in the next couple of months, as you go from this realization, whatever's you're in your awareness now in this cycle, you can use that realization to help you move forward from March when Pluto moves into your house. You also have Mars in the fifth, which can be very stimulating for your creativity. It can be stimulating and or aggravating around issues around children, for example. or love affairs that can be dynamic or it can be quarrelsome. Depends a little bit on the individuals and also on the circumstances of the relationship itself. But now we've got Mars retrograde for the last couple of months and only turning direct a week after this full moon. I think you're going to find that the latter half of January, and particularly after Mercury goes direct, certainly from February when it enters into your first house, you're going to find a lot more energy. You're going to feel that things are really taking shape. I think most of us are feeling that things are a bit of a slog right now. But you do have this opportunity to take advantage of Mars going through the fifth, which is quite dynamic, exciting, energizing for you because it's in a favorable energy for you. You can really use that the next couple of months before Mars leaves then on the 25th of March. So I wish you a fantastic 2023 ahead, Aquarius, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Pisces, this full moon is happening in the fifth house. This is a very nice house. It's a lovely place to experience that awareness, this awakening of understanding or a sense of culmination around something that may have begun 6 months ago when there was a new moon in Capricorn during the summer. And 6 months from now, when you have the new moon in Cancer, I'm sorry, I meant 2 weeks ago when there was a new moon in Capricorn, and then 6 months ago there was a new moon in Cancer. So something is culminating there in that fifth house. And then also from now you can look forward to the next couple of weeks and see what is needing to change or what is going to be unfolding for you in that fifth house that regards children, your creativity, potential love issues, anything to do with love and joy, joyful expression, self-expression. What are you understanding about that right now? This is quite interesting. It seems to be, and that can be 6 months from now as well. You'll have the understanding now that you can find takes on a new shape 6 months from now when you have that new moon in Cancer in the summertime. And then the understanding seems to be coming in the opposite direction from Capricorn, where the sun is conjunct a retrograde Mercury. So you're having some kind of awareness around friends, groups of friends, who you hang out with, who you socialize with. It's also with regards to your goals, your future goals and dreams. That can also be with reference to the money that you earn from the thing that you do. And so there's an awareness there. So this fifth house of what makes you happy and joyful, what brings you, what makes you feel creative, what gives you dynamism, is sort of being reflected upon, let's say, by Mercury retrograde, asking you to reconsider that, asking you to try and understand that, potentially reorganize that. So it may have something to do also with letting go of friends or recognizing that certain friends it's just no longer physically possible to be with them, or for at least this particular time, there's some delay or distance between you. Your ruler Jupiter is in the second house. This is very favorable for money. The fifth house is also very favorable. It's very helpful, and the 11th house in opposition where the sun is, that's a money house too. So it could be that there's some new understanding around money that has to do with your creative input, that has to do with entrepreneurship, because the fifth house can be that as well. Nonetheless, it's very supportive, and so your ruler going through the second house until the middle of May is going to give you a great boost as well, a nice boost of a sense of what is possible and expanding yourself financially. It looks like, because Mars has been in your fourth house for some time now, since the 20th of August of last year, Mars in the fourth house is very challenging psychologically, can have you feeling edgy, can have you feeling frustrated, finding it difficult, especially during the retrograde phase of the last couple of months, finding it difficult to feel happy or to just be fulfilled, feeling your personal happiness. And so now, a week after this full moon, we're going to have Mars turning direct. And when Mars goes direct, it's going to cover a bit of the territory it already covered as a retrograde. So it already went direct and then back retrograde. Now it's going for a third pass throughout the month of January and into February. You're going to get a kind of a review and understanding of how to go forward. This can also have to do with the physical home that you live in, house and home, that can be feeling, now I need to move, or I'm really ready. I've been thinking about this. It's been driving me nuts these last few months. I want to go. And having a sense now that the time is better, more opportune. And so having that dynamism of Mars going direct after the 12th of January could help you if you're looking for a new home, if you're looking for new circumstances around your house and home, or if there's been some issue around that, including renovation or some problems at home. That could also be family issues. Maybe there's been challenges around family that can be alleviated when Mars goes direct and starts moving through there. It won't be as heavy or frustrating as it's been feeling. So I think all in all, you're going to find that come the new moon in Aquarius on the 21st of January, you're going to find that things have shifted quite a lot, and there's a nice feeling of flow, a creative flow as well as a financial flow, and even a nicer sense of happiness and feeling at home. So Pisces, good luck in 2023. I'm glad that you're here sharing my Piscean story as well with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.